Today in the blanket fort. And who is with us today? Who would you like to introduce yourself, sir?
Well, friends, my name is Lob. I've been a friend of Joe's since we were lads. I was actually thinking about it, Joe, and
I
I don't remember the first time that we met. It must have just been so
think
early.
I remember meeting in kindergarten in Miss Galich's class.
No kidding. I
Think
assumed
so.
it was earlier than that, just because of our older brothers like Vin, who was on the show last week. Uh,
Yeah, but we had pretty much just moved there.
Gotcha. Up from Illinois.
Yeah, we lived just around Chicago, so lived in
Um,
Hillside.
Yeah, I was thinking about it today. I don't remember our first meeting, which is just kind
I
of
think I
wild to me.
remembered learning to tie shoes in kindergarten or something.
I I do remember a gigantic wooden shoe.
Yeah, that's what I remember, man. So maybe it was that.
Yeah. Huh.
I also remember plenty of like hanging out at your old house with our older brothers
Sure.
and like playing hide and seek in your house and playing in the like game room up in the attic in the
Yeah.
garage.
Oh yeah. The
Yeah.
uh the hangout up there. That
Lots
was
of bike
pretty cool.
riding.
Yep. Yep. That was pretty cool of my dang parents to put a clubhouse in the
It
attic
was
of
very
our
cool. It
garage.
was super cool.
Shag carpeting, bumper
Played some
pool.
what was the marble pinball game we had? You played God, Spitfire or what was it? Or
Oh,
Crossfire.
like Crossfire. Bum, bum, bum.
Crossfire.
Crossfire, y'all get caught up in our crossfire. Yeah, crossfire, y'all get caught up in our crossfire.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
commercial's awesome. We'll put a link to the Crossfire commercial in the credits. um, okay, so um, yeah, keep going, Lob. Sorry, I interrupted you. What do you
Oh,
want to
no
talk
worries,
about?
buddy. Um,
Last
you
week we
know,
talked about the Phantom of the Opera
yeah,
and sort of first nerdy experiences in general.
sure. And I found that really interesting to listen to Vin talk about his, not only early nerdy experiences, but horror as well. Like Phantom of the Opera
Yeah,
is obviously a horrific tale, and I
classic
found it
horror.
pretty, yeah, more gothic than our, modern kind of sensibilities would maybe be fruitful for,
Hmm.
because it is a lot of angst and build up, and oh my God, like how much of a struggle does somebody have to go through to realize that their captor is maybe their enemy. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? It's
yeah.
just like, hey. Um, but that probably changed with, in my opinion, of course, Lovecraft getting into a little bit more horrific horror kind of
Yeah,
genre
I
being
mean,
introduced.
he really was the one who opened up the whole cosmic thing and
Yeah,
started really pointing fingers at people maybe as far as
sure,
like more personal horror.
sure. But I really enjoyed the episode. And I like Phantom of the Opera too. I'm not a huge fan of musicals in
Yeah.
general. Even Disney movies these days, I have a hard time getting through because there's just so many
They're
damn musical
getting
numbers
pretty
where it's just,
machined. There's not too much difference between them these days.
yeah,
Some of them are
yeah.
pretty good. But
And I've had a hard time understanding layered choruses. Just hearing a group of 20 people singing the same lines and then compressed down and put to animation. Like I just most of the
yeah.
time, even when I was a kid, I mean, I just can't understand what the hell they're saying. Like if you're telling your story through a song, um, it comes out really muddled if there's multiple voices for me. I know
Could you
that's
name a
not the case
musical
for
you
everybody.
do like?
Phantom of the Opera. That'd be about it.
Any others?
Um, oh man, that is tough. I mean,
What about
lots.
animated stuff? Like, there's a few like
Yeah, I
famous.
mean, sure, Death Clock in
Yeah, yeah,
Metalocalypse, I definitely enjoy. But mostly it's just the ensemble kind of singing thing that really throws me off, and I
yeah,
just can't make out the lyrics clearly enough to, you know, get the story that they're trying to advance with that particular song.
yeah.
Um, and I have a feeling that's why I enjoy Studio Ghibli stuff a heck of a lot more than Disney, because there's
Ooh,
beautiful
so good,
music, but
so good.
not really featured songs.
Yeah, there's a real story happening.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, we still are trying to watch through all of them, basically.
nice.
Yeah,
I
we
was
found
really hoping to expose some of my younger cousins, and boy, expose is probably not the right word there, but to
it
some
never
Studio
is.
Ghibli
It
stuff.
never
Yeah,
is anymore. You
yeah.
can't use it.
But I'm still just kind of scratching my head trying to think of a musical that I would go out of my way to watch again, like even things
You
like
could see Book
Sweeney
of Mormon.
Todd.
That one's real good. Yeah,
Yeah,
Sweeney Todd is cool. I'd like to see that.
and even that I saw the film version of, and I I just didn't enjoy it. Like, not for lack of production or acting or anything like that, but just
I
sort
have an
of
idea for a musical that you'd probably dig, but
what you got.
yeah, it's called One Man's Trash, and it's about singing garbage men.
We are garbage men. We're here to clean. We pick up your trash.
Yeah, there's the
Thirsty.
first song. Um,
No, I mean, and even stuff like, animated series that are a little bit more lean towards the musical, like Bob's Burgers
yeah,
and
I mean
things like
Bob's
that.
has
Like,
amazing stuff in it. I love it.
and the more musical version episodes, I I
Not digging them.
no. No, and I know it's a part of the series. I know it's something they've been doing for a long time.
They're gonna do a
Um,
movie.
really, that's the first I'm hearing of that.
Oh yeah, they're
No kidding.
officially putting a movie out.
Right on. Well, that's awesome because I'm a big fan of the series. Obviously, our cats are named after Bob's Burgers
Yeah,
characters and that kind of thing. I mean, I love the show. Um, but me myself, just musicals aren't my thing.
yeah.
And
Okay.
I love stage acting. I love theater and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, what's like your favorite theater show other than
Man,
musicals?
probably that I've seen live. Um, we went and saw in high school, I believe with our high school English teacher, who
Mm-hmm.
for the time being, I guess, will remain anonymous, but our actual high school English teacher. I think we went and saw Antigone and
Yeah,
Oedipus Rex.
pretty sure that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, no shit. Yeah, I enjoy the stage show. I like costumes and acting and emoting and all that stuff. I can certainly appreciate. Um, but I can't decipher, you know.
Big
Uh,
choruses
yeah,
doing big
no,
numbers.
I can't do it. My
There,
my brain just
enough.
doesn't process it. Anyway, on to something actually interesting.
We'll put in some
We
cool bang bang boom boom bing bing boom boom today on Blanket Fort. We're going to talk about bling bing bing bing. We'll say it all. We'll say it at the same time. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Video.
video games.
Video game.
Kids, man.
Technology.
Yes, yes.
All right.
I
How
certainly
about
enjoyed it.
let's do like a How about some rapid fire questions here? We'll just switch off.
Sure.
First video game you got as a gift.
The earliest I remember is Final Fantasy VIII, which is really strange because it came from my grandma, one grandma that is particular. She's still alive today, and hello if you're listening, which you aren't, but she was even back 20 years ago when I was a lad, particularly out of touch and not hip and that kind of thing. And I got Final Fantasy VIII from her for Christmas, and I'm sure that my parents, bought secondhand games, and we already had a home PC and that kind of thing in the early 90s. But the first one that I remember receiving as a gift for myself is, Final Fantasy VIII for PlayStation 1. I didn't have a dang memory card, so I had to just leave my PlayStation 2 on.
Oh, it must have been melting.
You know what? And the real killer was I didn't even have a single memory card for that thing. So when I took out the first disc to get to disc 2 to restore, my entire playthrough was just erased. I did that probably 2, 3, or 4 times. I mean, it was bad.
That's brutal.
I
so
do remember.
Do you remember the days of not remembering of not knowing exactly how to work some of the tech?
Yes, I do.
Or having people these days don't understand the rigors of having to install games back in the day, on your basic computers that had no graphics cards and stuff.
Sure, just an integrated graphic card. Yeah. An early game that we got in my household, we had a Packard Bell with a lot of preloaded software. But a game that my parents actually purchased for my brother was So You Want to Be a Hero, or
oh man,
is Hero Quest 2? That series.
I don't want to say I forget the name of it exactly, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it's So You Want to Be a Hero.
And it's
a sequel. It's part of a series.
And a remake, I think, of the original game, because the graphics are.
There is a remake out now.
Oh, really?
There's they updated it. Yeah. Yeah, you can look it up. It's really rad. I think I downloaded it once.
There's nothing like 24 floppy disks to get your game on your computer. That's fun.
I remember I would always try to buy video games in random stores that I would find them in, because I was always looking for cool stuff. And I found these D&D software things. And I didn't understand how to work it. And once they were installed, it was you needed all these code words from the manual to get everything going.
Sure.
But I never understood that part of it, and I might have even lost the manual, or I didn't have the manual to begin with, or something. I don't know. And I was just God, I just want to play these D&D things.
Yeah, and probably, you would assume at the time it was an anti-piracy thing. And obviously these days with the resources that we have online, you could pull those up anytime you wanted. But
totally.
Yeah, you would assume that would be an anti-piracy thing, and
I guess so. Yeah,
it gets sold once, and one person or one machine gets to play it. That was a big thing back when the video game rental market was active. Yeah, in Blockbuster and local chains like the great one we had in Silver Lake, are more of a thing. Man, I talk about the video station of Silver Lake probably too much to people that don't ask. You know what I mean?
It's really an anchor into that universe.
Man, no kidding. And even when we were in high school, in the mid 2000s, it was already a relic. But one that we had been using for so long already, and really our only option available, that it was the go-to, dude.
I mean, it was really a good discovery little place for us. I think we found a lot of movies that ended up being cool for us, and video games too, probably, and just ambience, because it was
sure,
they don't exist like that anymore.
No
I
kidding.
mean, the place was really cool. It was just wall to wall cassette, empty cassette boxes, and then just like all organized perfectly. And
Yeah.
then there was a little train cart inside that you could go in that had all the kids' movies in it. And there were all kinds of movie memorabilia decorated throughout the whole place.
Yeah.
And even for a while, there was a haunted house room with all the horror movies in it, and you could go
Yeah.
into the haunted tour.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, it was so cool. Yeah.
Yeah, mannequins everywhere, whatever the big blockbuster from the previous year was that they were, releasing for VHS rental.
Yeah.
Now, they would do a mannequin and dress him up like, Sylvester Stallone and Cliffhanger or whatever it happened to be. And they actually had MST3K robot replicas,
That's
homemade
right.
ones.
They did, didn't they?
Yeah. Yes, they sure did. Right when
Um,
you walked in, take a left, and up there above like the video game and candy counter, kind of before the
mm,
main rental counter, they had
hmm
the MST3K
God,
crew.
I wish I could go back in time and just get a job there
No
as
kidding.
an alternate version of myself and just rent movies out to my young self.
Yeah. I
And
wish
get
I
me out of
could.
late fees because I always have late fees.
Late fee hell. Yeah.
Be like, yeah, I don't know. This kid paid it. I don't know. It just must not have been marked off.
I wish I could go back in time and be less of a dick to those people because I know it was a family owned and operated business,
You
and
know what?
I was terrible.
Hindsight.
Yes.
We had a pretty good system after school, usually on a Friday. Go up to get a pizza, big old football pizza, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Like a double pizza, basically.
Shout out to Benanti's Taste of Italy, still
One of the
active
best,
in Silver Lake, Wisconsin. Awesome stuff.
the best places I've ever
Yeah.
eaten.
Yeah. And whenever I talk to Jake the Grease, I
Yeah.
always rib him, tell him to send me out some breadsticks, send me out football pizza.
Yeah.
And they called it a football pizza not because it had anything to do with the NFL, anything like that. It was just two large pizzas with no disconnect between the two. It was just a
Like,
big
how do you make that connection?
Yeah, I don't know, but man, was it awesome. It fed our family of six many a night.
But also the two of us, many of them.
Yeah,
Many.
no kidding. No kidding.
So we'd get one of those on order and some sticks, and then we'd go across the street to find a movie,
Yep.
buy some candy probably too, and
Yeah.
then go pick up the pizza.
And the amazing thing was neither of us smoked weed at the time. We just had munchies immediately after school for no reason.
That was just pizza and movies was pretty much all we could live for.
Hey, living on the edge, man.
And video games.
Yeah.
So back to
And,
video games then.
Speaking of video games, one distinct memory I have of the two of us in the video station in Silver Lake was they had a arcade cabinet of Bad Dudes. And I remember going over there and dropping some quarters with your brother.
I played through that on the Nintendo with my older brother Brian when I visited him one year. I visited
Nice.
them in the summer when they lived in Texas, and we spent a day playing through Bad Dudes.
It's sort of just a Double Dragons clone, right?
Yeah, it's a street fighting side to side, scroller.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good
Right on.
stuff. Good game. Okay,
And
so
I think Silver Lake left a big mark on our psyche, like I'm sure a lot of
Oh, yeah.
people's hometowns did. You have weird things, you have houses that seemed a little bit out of the ordinary, and rumors would kind of spring up around them, and you guys would come up with your own kind of mythology for your surroundings. And as much as I'm glad that I'm not living in Silver Lake or Wisconsin at this point, I can look back at it fondly. Very fun.
Definitely. I love it out there. It's always fun to drive through and look at stuff. And yeah, I mean, oh man, we had so much fun. It
Yeah.
was a really good time. We had some crazy like Halloween parties that I remember really well back there at our old house, and um, winters were really fun because we would just get to roam around the streets, and it was so quiet at night
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
winter, and you could like have these epic winter adventures. It was really fun.
Sure. Near my early childhood house in Silver Lake was the snow depository lot where all the snow
Oh
plows would just
yeah.
push everything. And they would pile it up. I mean, to my adult eye, I would guess about 20, 25 foot high. But as a kid, it looked like a mountain range.
A thousand.
And, dig some tunnels through there. Stuff I
So
wouldn't let my kids
dangerous.
do. Yeah.
So
And dirty snow, too. Like snow taken right off the street and just plowed up into an empty lot.
Lil Caleb just like, hey, yeah, let's go.
It's time. It's tunnel time.
Is that's what you would say to yourself?
I think so.
Yeah. Who
I think
wouldn't?
I'm sending that message back into the past right now.
Yeah, dig.
Wig! Wig!
Um, the first game I remember really getting as a gift that was a big deal
Yeah.
was one Christmas we got a Sega Genesis with like Sonic 2, and I think that was the game it came with, and then we
Yeah.
also probably got a bunch of games with it. But over the years, we ended up collecting quite a few that I remember very fondly. There are some real gems on that system. We had
Yeah.
Aladdin, of course, and Lion King. Those are really good. And then Vector Man and Eternal Champions and Booger Man was my favorite. Uh,
So gross.
and it's such a good game. It's such a good platformer.
Yeah. And
Um,
perfect for the time. I mean, when Ren and Stimpy and that kind of thing was
yeah.
popular. I
Oh
mean,
man, all
just
that stuff.
nice
It
and
was such a good.
gross.
The style was so great.
Yeah.
Um, those were most of my favorites. There was the Hulk game was really good as well. That game's fun. And then we had a Menacer, which was the shooting game that had different attachments, like a scope and a shoulder thing, and it came with like 10 different games that you could play on it or something.
No
And
kidding.
oh yeah, one of them was like Toe Jam and Earl, and you were shooting stuff, and they were running around, and yeah, it was a really amazing game. You never played? Oh, dude, the
You know,
Menacer.
I feel like I remember the um, controller, but
It
not
was just a
actually
big gray
playing the
gun.
game. Yeah.
It was so awesome. Yeah, it was such a good one. It was really crazy. You had an attachment that went on top of the TV and it detected the gun.
Hmm.
And then you were shooting at all kinds of stuff like aliens and stuff like that. It was really cool.
I
Um,
remember a couple of failed attempts of playing Dragon Strike with you when we were youngins. I remember,
Many.
popping in the
Yeah.
VHS and
Well,
being
yeah.
asleep before the
So
end of the tape.
it's so funny. So it was so hard to learn how to play D&D back then because
Yeah.
only one person I knew, who was my oldest brother, would play with me, but he lived in other states, so like it was really hard to get other people to play. And I had such minor resources without the internet at the time, and then even when the internet was out, it was pretty minor. Um, but there was still like Dragon magazine, which I had a few issues of that I like cherished that were really cool. And then I had like a 3.5 edition of the Player's Handbook eventually, and we had the old red books.
Yeah.
And yeah, me and you would try and play, but it was so hard to figure out like how to run a game and everything. Because now it's like there's podcasts and there's live shows and there's all this super famous stuff right now with all the this really cool stuff that's happening with D&D. Uh,
Yeah.
but back then it was like none of our peers cared about it that I knew.
And
Like
the
nobody wanted to play.
craziest thing is we were right in the heartland. I
I
mean,
know, yeah.
D&D was invented a 15-minute drive up the road from where we were
Hmm.
living at the time in Lake Geneva.
Yeah.
And there was still, I mean, no D&D or RPG culture
No,
growing
I
up.
mean, the first I remember was maybe at there was a wargaming club at Parkside. And that was
Yeah,
like the first time I remember even seeing a gaming club there.
sure.
But
And I
I was
mean,
always like trying, yeah.
wargaming is, a far sight from
Yeah, it's not
you
the
know,
same.
D&D RPG style stuff. I mean,
Yeah,
I
I
played
don't
my,
think they
my
did much D&D in there.
I'm sure it's Warhammer 40K, that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So anyway,
Yes.
there we are. The frozen tundra.
The formative years.
Yeah.
Nerds. Now worldwide.
Yeah. Nerds Incorporated. And it's really been cool to see as we've gotten older, because we're geezers at this point at 30. Nerd culture and that sort of thing just not only becoming acceptable, but like,
Thriving.
yeah. And, if you're not nerdy into something, you're probably pretty dang boring and don't really have many interests and that kind of thing. Like,
Yeah, I think what we're finding is a lot of people do have something that they can end up being nerdy about, but they didn't think it was considered
sure.
like specific enough, maybe. I
Yeah, I
don't
mean,
know.
one of my older brothers who's now an engineer, I mean, I always called him a car nerd whenever he would get on my case about playing too many video games or spending too
Hmm.
much time on my computer or whatever. And I said, well, you're a fucking nerd too. You're a car nerd. So chill out. Chill out, back off, cool off, leave me alone.
uh, um, how about games let's talk about games you and I played, video games,
Sure.
together. One that I was replaying recently that I'm still meaning to get back to is the original Star Wars Battlefront.
Yeah, I now have that on PlayStation 2 as
Ooh,
well as my Steam account. So
yeah.
yeah, Battlefront and I think Battlefront 2. I think that's the
Yeah, I
case with
have
both of
both
them.
on Steam.
And I remember a few key nights when we were in school still, and working shitty jobs at a grocery store, staying up from the night before until our morning
Character
shift
building.
started. Yo, that was character building, all right. And playing Battlefront until our shift starting, in the morning. It was, and
They were,
as an old man, I can't even imagine anymore if I'm up past 11 o'clock on a mess the
I
next
know.
day.
We're supposed to go out in a few hours for early birthday drinks tonight, and then come back here and have a small party and stuff, and
Cool.
be surprised if I make it past like 10:30. We'll be like, oh boy.
And
But
even today, I mean, by the end of my workday, I had down two, large energy drinks as well as my
yeah,
normal coffee in the morning and that kind of thing. To be honest with you, I'm still
tired.
dragging ass.
Yeah, I'm on my second round of coffees right now.
Nice.
What
So
else?
our journey away from Silver Lake, once we were in college, we of course went to school together and got involved.
Prestigious
Oh yeah,
University of Wisconsin Parkside.
yep, yep. When I tell strangers that story, I just say university. It was a University of Wisconsin school.
It was
The
home of the Petrifying Springs.
Yep, yep. Home of the Rangers and not Park Rangers, Aragorn Rangers.
That's true.
But got involved in our student radio station,
True.
which I,
Spearheaded.
personally, yeah, I just got crazy about and had liked not only radio but talk radio specifically for a couple of years prior, and was getting into it. But it was, of course, before you could hop on YouTube and pull up your favorite old radio segments and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Um, you know, as a teenager, I struggled pretty mightily with sleep disorders and that sort of thing, and it was always comforting to be able to turn on AM radio and hear somebody talk
Nice.
to you and kind
Yeah,
of be a voice in the darkness and that kind of thing. So
totally.
my goal was always to try and give that to somebody else to sort of pass it on and help somebody who was just awake and alone in the middle of the night.
Yeah, and I
Uh,
hope we did while we were at the campus there doing that. It was a really fun time to do the show when we had our slot, and we had a lot of fun in that tiny, dirty little studio.
and spent a lot of time in there. I mean, at the peak, I think we were doing 4 nights a week for several hours a show, and
I think you were
uh,
in there a lot more than I was because I wasn't living on campus, but
sure.
yeah, you were doing a lot of shows there.
And I feel like this is a very natural growth from that. It's
Hmm.
it's an interest that I've never really lost interest in. These days, I'm sort of sporadically doing our community radio station here in Colorado, 1079.
1079.
And
It's a good one.
yeah, I've taken the last several months off from it just because we've moved and are living further away from the station, and I'm
Yeah.
working a lot more hours. But it's certainly something I'll always circle back to and try
Hmm.
to create um, content for people,
Yeah.
whether I have 5 listeners or a multitude.
Hmm.
Um, Joe, I picked up a great new vocabulary word in the last
Okay.
couple of weeks.
Hit me.
Multitudinous.
Ooh.
Multitudinous.
Use it in
Which
a sentence, please.
I heard multitudinous footsteps around our campsite. That sort of thing.
I would
And
probably get up if someone said
yeah,
that.
no kidding. Um, and multitude is obviously a very common word, but seeing that written out in a book I was reading, I had to do kind of a triple take on it and sound it out and go, oh,
Do my eyes deceive
multitudinous.
me?
I was reading Algernon Blackwood, and that was dropped, I think, in the short story called The Willows or
Mm,
Willows. Yeah, very cool
like
stuff.
gothic horror.
Not really gothic, more weird fiction.
Mm,
Um,
okay.
and it seems, I think, just pre Lovecraft,
Okay.
late 1800s, early 1900s, and I picked up a collection of short stories of his maybe a month
Mm,
ago,
cool.
and I've been loving it. There's another really, really good one in there called The Wendigo, and another great one called uh, The Insanity of Jones. And it had a
Mm,
subtitle, something like A Study in Reincarnation. And the theme he kind of keeps hitting over and over, reading through these short stories. And I've never read the author before picking up this book, but he seems to kind of hammer on a theme of um, normal everyday perceptions and then
okay.
piercing the veil into otherworldly
Mm,
um, stuff, which to me is very Lovecraftian. That just
oh
behind
yeah.
the everyday normal
If you could
existence
only
there's
see just a little further, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I love From
So
Beyond. I think that's one of my favorite stories.
yeah,
And the movie rendition of it is very good, I think.
and very different but very cool.
Yeah.
If I remember right, the movie climax is like a BDSM dungeon in somebody's attic,
It's a
something
little
like that.
intense. It's a little bit crazy. A la Hellraiser, kind of. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
More body horror, you know.
Yeah. Um, I've I've been trying to branch out from Lovecraft, who, was, I think, formative for both you and I. And I do
Very
believe
much. Yeah.
you introduced me to him.
I don't even remember how I
Through
found it. I think it was my brother gave me a book series that was all of his short. It was like all of the books. It was a really nice collection.
that Del Rey one with all the gray
Yeah.
covers, gray and
Yeah.
black art with the red
There's a
accents and
metal
stuff.
Obituary used it for a metal album.
Sure, and of course, you have easy metal references like Metallica's instrumental, Call of Cthulhu, The Thing That Should Not Be, that sort of thing. Like, I
Oh,
think
Cradle
that
of
was my,
Filth did Cthulhu Dawn.
yeah, yeah, I think, that was really my first introduction to Lovecraftian ideas. And then, after, a year or two of
Hmm.
listening to that stuff, I, you know,
Figured it.
started seeking
Yeah.
it out and
Hmm.
actually reading the stuff.
Yeah, I think
But I'm
Hellboy was also a pretty good influence for me as far as some of those things because it like
sure,
led me to researching stuff about like Robert Bloch and
yeah,
then Lovecraft.
yeah. I've been trying to sort of branch out from Lovecraft as far as his influences and his literary circle. So Ambrose Bierce, that's how I got my hands on Algernon Blackwood, which I've been really impressed with his stuff. Chambers, just all these great weird fiction writers that were pretty uncelebrated back then and even still today, but their work does carry on.
And you were pretty big into like Conan,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Robert E. Howard, sure.
Yeah,
And great friend and kind of pen pal of Lovecraft, and
yeah,
they would use each other's world building kind of
yeah.
interchangeably and reference each
Uh,
other's stuff.
then there's Michael Moorcock and Elric,
Yeah, yeah, and that's a
the whole
a
timeline.
series. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I mean it's like hard to even explain at first.
sure, yeah, because Elric is only a fraction
One
of this
facet,
greater
right?
Eternal Champions kind of meta series where all these different heroes and villains are reincarnated or different dimensional versions of the same
Hmm.
soul or the same
Yeah,
uh, essence of a
same
character.
character. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really good stuff. I read some Elric recently, and it was quite a exercise for my brain. It was pretty intense. It's very psychedelic, very trippy,
Sure.
and the concepts are high in that writing.
What were you reading?
So it was basically just a bunch of Elric strung together, like a bunch of the stories in one volume.
Awesome.
Um, yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, I finished up on the whole Elric saga in my collection.
Man,
I have way too
you have
many
like a
books
big.
around
Oh
here.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We kind of can't stop buying them.
Yeah.
We have a lot of stuff.
Um, but yeah, finished Stormbringer, and
Oh yeah.
I feel like the first trilogy of books, it strikes the right note of tragedy in Elric's storyline, where he's not just triumphant, even though he's very powerful and not on his own, but through, of course, drugs and magic.
Yeah.
Uh, but he's so mighty, but he can't fight fate, and certain things are going to happen regardless, and he can't overcome them through
He's doomed.
strength of arms or magic. Yeah,
He's just
and
persistently doomed.
I think as the series goes on, um, that element starts waning and just not really having as much of an effect, and it's just kind of Elric going on adventures, and
Hmm.
that's great, but not really. Um,
Loses focus from like the
yeah, it doesn't
beginning of it.
capture the essence like the early few short stories do.
I did pick up a really sweet series of comics they did that was a short run back in the day of Elric, and it's like 4 issues, I think, maybe
Well,
6.
was it Dark Horse that did those?
No, it's like epic, epic, or it's one of the old sci-fi comic. Uh, Hold on, let me grab them.
I don't recognize the publisher though. PC.
Pacific, I'm pretty sure. It was, oh man, lots of good like
Cool.
fantasy and sci-fi stuff came through. I mean, the artwork in these is just nuts. It's so cool.
Yeah,
Check
cool
this out.
Silverhawk ad on the back. Whoa. Stormbringer.
Yeah, I mean, the
Demon
full
Blade.
pages are just nuts, dude. They're just totally crazy. Really good artwork. Really cool.
Well, and speaking of, big splash pages and comics, obviously Starlin's masterpiece
Yeah,
has been adapted to
sort of.
theatrical release. Yeah, sort of is
I'm
right, man.
a little
Holy
sour, but
moly.
yeah, it's been fun to
hear
watch. I'm just a
Yeah.
little sour about some things.
Yeah, they were way off the mark on. We're talking Avengers.
Name it something else,
Yeah.
That's my
Yeah.
gripe. Like, just don't use the title of something if you're not gonna follow it to the T.
Sure. And even things like the Infinity Gems having, different color assigned to the aspect was annoying to me. I'm thinking,
a lot of those
there's the
things,
Soul Stone, and just, oh no, it's
a
not.
lot of them, yeah. Yeah, they're fun.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm kind of waiting for more info on this Robert Pattinson Batman stuff.
Yeah.
You were saying it's going to focus heavy on detective work, the movie?
That's what I read, that they latched on to the world's greatest detective title, and it's going to be,
that.
Old
school.
mystery detective Batman figuring stuff out, and it's not.
That's what I love about the games, and
Yeah.
I mean the Arkham series of games is so insanely fun.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
I hope they do focus on that.
I haven't played through the whole series, but I think
Night is really good.
Cool. Yeah, I don't even know that I've played a minute of it.
Ooh, it's fun. You get to drive
It's
the
in my
Batmobile everywhere.
cool. and loved all the cameos in there, bringing up all the more obscure Batman characters.
I have not fully completed it yet. I have to solve all the Riddler's puzzles, and it is hard. There's a lot to do.
I have no patience for those, to be
I'm
honest.
at like over 110% in the game. It's crazy, but yeah. And there's tons of other content too, where you get to play other characters, and I haven't even done those, like little stories. They call them like Arkham stories or something.
Sure, like little side games.
Yeah, like Harley Quinn and Batgirl and Robin and Nightwing and all kinds of stuff.
And I think Nolan's trilogy of Batman movies touched on detective aspects. Like, obviously, there's times where he's figuring stuff out and that sort of thing. But it really isn't like something like Batman the Animated Series, where he's just sitting there trying to solve a puzzle and looking at the Bat computer, and all of a sudden Alfred says something offhand, and Bruce Wayne gets, aha.
For me, I think the best is really, there's two bests. There's the Michael Keaton, Jack Nicholson, Tim Burton film, the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the animated series with Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill. That show is, the best for sure for me. That's number one. But they're tied as far as I love that movie. That's like one of the first movies I ever saw.
Sure.
And I watched it a lot.
They're almost like companion pieces to one another. Like, Batman the Animated Series is so complementary to.
They use the same name for Joker. They use Jack Napier.
Yeah.
And they touch on things from the movie, even, I'm pretty sure, in the show.
Of course, Batman using giant machine guns and the Batwing never sat well with me. When he's trying to, not, I guess, trying to shoot down Joker, but just shooting up that street for no good reason.
Yeah, he's really just blown up. Yeah, I mean, and then the guy who he lets fall down the bell tower.
Yeah.
I think we talked about that once.
Of course, for the time, it was nice and gritty, and Tim Burton obviously, lends a dark and weird tone.
The last thing before that was the '60s show, and then all just cartoons,
Yeah.
and it was all the older Hanna-Barbera kind of stuff. And then Frank Miller did Dark Knight, and that was basically what gave that vision to Tim Burton, I think.
Yeah. It went from campy to, dark and brooding, and
Yeah, real dark, real quick.
and that was always funny for me. Like, for my dad, Batman was the '66
Oh
live
yeah,
action TV
I love
series.
that one though. I really love that show. I think Adam West and uh, it was Burt Ward
Or
played
yeah,
Robin. That
yeah.
was a really good show. And then, um, gosh, why can't I think of Joker's name right now? It's
Romero,
uh, yeah,
Romeo, something
yeah.
along those
No,
lines.
it was oh my gosh, it's killing me. Now I have to know. So we're gonna have to edit out that I had to look for it.
Having to do makeup over his mustache because it was his signature facial hair.
Cesar Romero,
Yeah, Cesar Romero. Yeah.
known in the day as the Latin from Manhattan.
Oh,
He had a full career before that show, I guess,
that's cool.
which I kind of knew, but I never saw anything he was in. But yeah, he never shaved his mustache because I think it's what he was famous for. He's kind of like, Burt Reynolds.
Zach Wilde without a beard.
Mm. Okay, so what have you recently been nerding out on?
Well, speaking of big Hollywood adaptations, I'm of course very, very, very hyped for the new Dune movie coming out next year in
Oh
2020.
yeah.
I couldn't be more hyped. I think the director is as well suited as anybody could possibly be for it. He did Blade
Yeah.
Runner.
Yeah,
The
2049
recent
was
sequel,
really good.
Yeah, yeah. It has a big budget. I, think that there's a lot of fans of the series involved in it, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying not to let myself get overexcited for
Don't
it.
overshoot it.
But I already am.
No, it's going to be
So,
amazing. I think they're doing 2 parts for the first story, right?
yeah,
Or it's 2 movies that they're signed to do.
that's the rumor. So, I mean,
Super
I would
excited.
have,
Yeah,
of
I can't wait.
course, love to see, probably Dune Messiah and Children of Dune be compressed into one movie.
Mm-hmm.
Just because to me, they're sort of
Children of Dune's pretty short, isn't it? Or is it Dune Messiah that's real short?
I think Dune Messiah is the shorter
Yeah,
of the
that
two.
one's real short.
But I think they're the weakest and only because
What you've told me, yeah.
I think they sort of lack focus. You're introduced to all these side characters and none of them really have payoffs or big impacts in the story. And not that every side character has to, but it feels like a lot of fluff and a lot of floundering and not really a super clear vision. Whereas the rest of the series from God Emperor to the completion are really strong self-contained stories.
Okay.
And a little less so for the final 2 books, Chapter House Dune and Heretics of Dune, but flip them in the reverse order.
Yeah.
Those are more of an overarching story between the two, and he was planning on doing a 3rd book to kind of do, another trilogy that, Frank Herbert died before he was able to complete. So it does end on sort of a cliffhanger and unsatisfactory conclusion, but so much cool stuff is introduced and there's so much cool world building in those final couple of books because, in God Emperor you have this multi 1,000-year reign, and everything sort of changes. Society and religion and everything in the universe is shifted, and then you get to see the aftermath sort of play out in the final two
Right.
books. So
It's a very big, overarching story that spans a lot of worlds.
yeah, and a lot of time. I mean, I think from the beginning of the first book to the end of the last book that Frank Herbert wrote, not his son, um, I think it's something like 10,000 years that's
Yeah.
chronicled, and a lot of them through journal entries and sort of
Mm-hmm.
literary flashbacks and that sort of thing. Um, I actually have a funny, quick little side note for you, Joe.
Yeah.
We were at a Denver Comic Con probably 5 years ago, and Brian Herbert, Frank's
Oh,
son,
yeah.
and his co-author, who they had done the expanded Dune universe
Right.
together. Um, they had a big booth, big
Kevin
money.
J. Anderson. I have one of their books on my shelf, but I haven't read it.
No kidding. What book is it?
House Atreides. I think I started reading it and I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, it reads like YA. Like the little bit that I've
Yeah.
sampled here and there is a little bit like, man, this is far from
It's
from
not
Frank
as epic as
Herbert's
the
Dune.
first book. I could read the first book nonstop and never get
Yeah,
sick of it. Dune. It's so
it's
good.
so deep. I mean, it's so
So layered.
dense.
Yeah.
And a lot like Tolkien, there's lots of language play.
Yeah.
You know, um,
The songs that,
yeah,
are getting sung and yeah.
yeah,
Sorry, I cut
borrowed
you off a little.
language, and
Yeah.
um, there's things that without background knowledge, you wouldn't really make the connection that, oh, he's trying to compare, this to that in our own historical timeline, um, and just really beautiful wordsmithing going on there by Frank Herbert as the
Yeah.
series goes on. But anyway, we're at this Comic Con down in Denver, and people, and this is one of those booths, huge, beautiful graphic displays, and it was almost like a two-story structure. And in the upper level, the guests could go and retire for a little bit and drink some water and rest and come back down and sign more books or whatever they were doing. And fans avoided this thing like, I mean, I watched people go out of their way to walk around it because they were like embarrassed to make eye contact with Frank Herbert's son
Oh
regarding
my
these books.
gosh.
And it was embarrassing and it was sad, and
Did you go?
no, no, I didn't. But Max Brooks was actually right next door to them.
Oh, there you
So
go.
I went over and picked up his graphic
I
novel
remember. Yeah, you
project
got
that he
that.
was working on and talked to him for a few minutes and gushed about the zombie survival guide and World War Z and and that zombie stuff that he did. But man, I gotta say, I felt a little bit bad for Brian Herbert.
Well, let's put a
Just
shout out. Hey,
because
Brian Herbert, if you
Brian
want to talk
Herbert,
to us someday, we'll put you on
yeah,
the show.
yep, we will, and we won't just put you on blast.
We'll let you talk about whatever Dune related stuff you want to talk about or
Yeah,
non Dune related. So if you're listening, which would be amazing for some reason, if you got onto my Facebook and found out about this show, we do like Dune.
yeah, hit our publisher up,
Yeah, talk to our
producer.
people, man.
Yeah,
Um, okay. I also hear there's definitely a Dune tabletop RPG coming out in uh, simultaneously with the movies that are coming.
yeah, and a remake or kind of rework of the board game, the old Dune board game.
I never got to play that.
I've seen it, but I've never picked it up or played it. I think it was a tie-in with the Lynch movie.
And then there's the oh, gosh, like Command and Conquer style video games
Yeah,
that they did.
yeah, Dune 2000 and those.
Yeah.
And that was more a series that I played at friends' houses.
But you
A
were
friend,
big into like Command and Conquer.
sure. Yeah,
Uh,
strategy games and 4X games. I mean, they've
Sim
always
City,
been
I
my
played a
jam.
bit of
Yeah,
that.
and I'm still playing lots of the Total War series. Playing Total War Warhammer 2, as well as Total War Three Kingdoms. Just actually, I think came out in the last 24 hours, and that's
Oh man.
Romance of the Three Kingdoms setting.
Oh,
So I'm sure it's going to sell, all the units in China and in Asia.
damn.
Um, and yeah, I have it downloaded, haven't booted it up yet.
Ooh. I just
Who
installed but haven't
dog?
really played it much. I have Endless Legend.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great
I think
game. I
that's
have
the
that one on Steam too.
Witcher world, right?
Mm, It might be the same studio, but I don't think it shares anything with the
Oh, I
setting.
thought it was the same setting as the Witcher series. Hmm.
Not as far as I know. I've played a good number of hours in that one, and there is a companion series that's Endless Space. That's
Oh, right. Oh,
same
yeah.
idea, same 4X kind of gameplay, but
Nice.
a
Yeah, I'm
sci-fi
gonna try and
setting.
get into it to play something
It's
different.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's something that I would normally put on an album and listen to it while I'm playing because
Hmm.
gameplay wise, it's a little bit I don't want to say simplistic, but it's more so strategy and resource building rather than in your face kind of gameplay and Twitch gaming kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
So a
Right.
good
It's not like a
audiobook goes a long
StarCraft
way.
or something.
Sure, yeah, exactly. Um, not so much arcade
Yeah, more of
gameplay.
a thinking game.
Yeah.
Um,
Um,
but other than that, I've been jumping back into Neverwinter Nights, which is a game I super have always loved. It's one of my
mhm,
favorites, probably one of my top three video games of all time, I think.
yeah.
Uh, and I've never even beat it, so I'm gonna try and really get through it on this play.
I had my first quality playthrough of Oblivion in the last
Oh,
year.
wow. I've
It
never
took
beat
me a
that one.
long time. Um,
Josh
I
did, I think.
haven't either. I didn't really know there was an ending. Is it just sort of the end of
I
your
mean, I
main
figure
story
there's a main
quest?
story. Yeah, I figure, there's a main story. There are bonus things that came out. Like Josh played through, I think he pretty much beat the whole main storyline, and then there's like two expansion packs. There's like Knights of
Yeah.
the Nine and Shivering Isles.
And I got through Shivering Isles and really enjoyed it. I mean, that one's a pretty surreal experience. You're going
Hmm.
into the
Like
the
Chaos
realm of
God kind of shit.
madness and
Yeah,
good stuff.
yeah.
I'm
Did you
and
play much of Elder Scrolls Online?
No, only in beta.
Good. Yeah,
Um,
it got really good. I don't have it installed, but I played it for quite a while,
yeah,
and I did subscribe for a while, but I gotta just reinstall it because it's a great game, and I have some sweet mounts.
yeah. I mean, for me, it's always a case of too many games, not enough time. I mean, I would
Yeah, I
I
know.
would love to revisit
Yeah,
Star Wars: The Old Republic
I got
MMO
that.
game.
Yep.
I would
Oh
love to
yeah,
revisit
that one's good.
Secret
Yeah.
World. Um,
Same. I want to play that more. I only tried it.
do you have the full version on Steam? Not that this will be interesting to anybody but us, but
I have one version of it. I don't have
cool.
Steam open right now, but yeah, I have something.
Gotcha. Cool. Because I have it's the enhanced edition or the endless edition or something like that.